This week on Painting Lines.
The interesting thing about grass tennis is it really emphasizes kind of the men's style of game.
Djokovic is really going to enter this tournament. He's going to play around. He might lose or he might get injured and pull out again and just kind of blow up the whole thing.
Welcome to the Painting Lines podcast, your one-stop shop for all things tennis. Join Erik and Aidan in their discussion for updates on news and pop culture, and from hot takes to betting, they've got you covered.
Ready? Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week we had an incredible interview with Sam Querrey, and this week with Wimbledon kicking off, we just wanted to sort of update the state of the tour and how this kind of bodes for this year's Wimbledon. FYI, we're recording this on the second day of Wimbledon, so some of our comments will have the results of the first round in mind. Just to kick us off, Erik, how about you start us with just one thing you're kind of hoping to see this year at the All England Club?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge what a time for sports right now because we have Wimbledon kicking off. We have the Euros, soccer in full swing, Copa America. The NBA draft just happened. LeBron's son just got drafted to the same team.
That's crazy.
My Florida Panthers just brought the Stanley Cup down to South Florida. How crazy is that? But this is a tennis podcast. So regarding Wimbledon, I would say I'm most excited for, I guess, our generation's best rivalry in the making, an Alcaraz Sinner matchup. And unfortunately, it'll come, if it does, in the semis because they're in the same half of the draw.
Okay. So I completely agree. That's probably the marquee matchup to see
Oh,
if
yeah.
it can happen. Seems like every time they play, it's like a classic immediately.
Yeah. I'm pumped. I'm pumped about it. I guess I'm also kind of looking for certain players getting exposed on grass because it's such a toss up, right? We have, you know, what percent of grass is the season? Like
Like 10%.
10% exactly. So it's anybody's game, right? And I love when top players can't perform on grass.
Yeah, I mean that kind of feel like goes against your argument for the top seeds making the later rounds though.
It's my only exception because
Is it on
I
grass?
realized that I do love grass tennis. I think more than
Why is
more
that?
than the
Like
other
what makes it
surfaces.
stand out to you?
Just the faster points.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the classiness of it. Like that's how tennis was originated. And I
Mm.
played on grass for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I just felt more of a connection to it.
It's like the tradition kind of.
It's a tradition, yeah. I'm a traditional.
Yeah. I think also the interesting thing about grass tennis is it really emphasizes kind of the men's style of game because when they play on clay, the points are much slower, they're much more strategic, and I feel like that's kind of how women's tennis generally is because they just don't generate as much power. And then you
Right.
go onto grass and there's so much more easy power with the ball kind of skipping along that you have these fast points. You have situations where someone can just overpower the game, and that's something like clay or hard court, it's much harder to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like because you said that, it's now making, I guess I'm resonating more because I may not be as technically sound. So I think it's more of a, like, when I say certain players getting exposed, it's like maybe smaller, weaker players who are able to play longer points and not exert as much power. Like on grass, they just can't play their same style of game that they would on clay.
100%. I mean, you
You
look at
know?
someone like Baez who lost in the
Yeah.
first round and he lost in straight sets, but you look at him on clay and it's like he's a top contender.
Oh, dude, I know. And then even Devoni too, who's
Exactly. Yeah.
someone who was making a big name for himself earlier this year.
Yeah, exactly, on clay, and now on grass he's nowhere.
It'll be
But
excited.
100%. But so let's just jump right into it and kind of for this update on the state of the tour. I just want to kind of break down like the top contenders that we kind of expect to see do well in this tournament. Starting it off with Alcaraz, obviously last year's champ and the most recent Grand Slam champ at the French Open. Obviously, he beat Djokovic the final here last year, and also the other top contender, the best guy in the world right now, Sinner. Alcaraz is 2-0 against him this year. Obviously, they haven't played on grass court yet, but with all these things, you got to say Alcaraz like a top contender and maybe the favorite, right?
Oh yeah, 100% top contender. Favorite? I'm not 100% convinced. Just based on the fact that Sinner won Hala, Alcaraz lost to Draper in Queens Club. And then there was also the big controversy where Alcaraz was out in Ibiza, partying, whatever, celebrating his Roland Garros win. But I don't know. I mean, he's definitely a top contender, but I think I like Sinner in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Sinner is like he's made such drastic steps up since last year. Also, he didn't do poorly in Wimbledon last year. Like he made the semis. That's not a bad run for him. And
Mm.
he looked great in his first round matchup against Hanfman. And while he didn't win in straight sets, he was pretty dominant, won the first two, and then closed it out in four. So a pretty impressive win for him and kind of bodes well for how his game is going this year. He's almost at 40 wins now with only 3 losses.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think his title in Hala was just a massive statement because you mentioned this before on the podcast. Like, you need to consolidate your ranking, right? Or whatever you do before. And I feel like that's what he was. Like with his new number one ranking, he consolidated with a title because it wouldn't look the best if he has this new number one ranking and just doesn't win anything. Like he is following it up with a big win. And yeah, like you said, he looked, you know, great against Hoffman. And Hoffman's a solid grass player too. It's not an easy matchup first round.
Yeah, overall, I think very impressive from center. But moving on to another guy that we have to talk about, and a lot of people didn't think he was going to be playing, and probably were
Yeah.
breathing a sigh of relief for a second there, but had to re-anticipate his
Yeah,
arrival.
me being one of those guys, I did not think he was.
I mean, dude, my what's new of the week was like 2 weeks ago was that Djokovic was out of the tournament, and then slowly it was like, wait, he's actually playing? Oh, what? And then he plays his first round today and absolutely dominates his opponent. Won 6-1, 6-2, 6-2. Looked like he had never had an injury in his life. But
Yeah, the haters will say he never even got surgery.
yeah, but overall, it's impossible to ignore him. While he has had some false steps this year with some earlier losses than we expect, even though they weren't really that many early losses other than maybe second round at Indian Wells. And he's had some health issues, obviously, with having to pull out of the French Open. I still think if he can survive a couple rounds into the tournament, kind of like I think Sam said this last week, if he can survive a couple rounds into this tournament, all of a sudden he can become a top contender again.
Yeah, well, I'm happy with this result because I was pretty bummed when I found out that he was playing and then thus putting Alcaraz and Sinner on the same side of the draw. And I was just pissed because I was thinking, oh, Djokovic is really going to enter this tournament. He's going to play around. He might lose or he might get injured and pull out again and just kind of blow up the whole thing. But he looks great right now, so I hope he can continue to keep the form that he's
Yeah, we just need to see him do what Nadal did, where
in.
like he makes it all the way to the
Oh
semis and
my
then just
God.
withdraws.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but anyway, moving on to another top guy that I think is honestly a little bit under the radar right now as a top contender is Medvedev because Medvedev hasn't had the greatest results this year. He made the final in the Australian Open, lost, and then he lost in Miami to Sinner, and then he hasn't collected. Has he gotten a single title this year?
No, no, he
And
hasn't.
it's like, okay, yeah, that's pretty disappointing, but he's still very dangerous. And I think grass really suits his game with how flat he hits those balls. And he made the semifinal last year. So I think he has the potential to make a deep run here and maybe take the whole thing.
Yeah, he's definitely due. And I think this could be the year with a somewhat open draw, right? I mean, in his first round matchup, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little conflicted. I love Kova just being American, but he beat him pretty handedly. So I was happy with either outcome just because I like the fact that Medvedev is, working towards possibly a Wimbledon Grand Slam. And then, I would have been happy with Kova winning too. But
Hmm.
either way, just happy with the result.
Yeah. And then the last top contender we got here is Zverev, who has been great this year, but Wimbledon has been his worst major of like his career. Like, not just this say that he's done super poorly. Like, he's made the fourth round a couple times, but that's a little bit less than you expect from a guy that's currently one of the top 5 guys in the world. So for him, I feel like it's just tough to know. I feel like he's not that great on grass, but as a good player overall, you kind of expect him to still do pretty well here.
Yeah, this begs the age-old question, or I guess something that I've been thinking about. Like, where do you draw the line of players who are very, very good, very high achieving, but may not be on grass? Like, do you still expect them to do well on grass, even though it's such a small proportion of the season? Like, is Zverev one of those guys where I guess because he's a top player, you should expect him to go far, even though grass isn't his surface?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, yeah, if you put Djokovic at a little bit of a disadvantage, do you still expect him to beat, like, if you put him a set down, do you still expect him to beat a guy outside of the top 20? Probably, but it's going to be a lot more difficult for him. I think
Mhm.
as we were looking at with someone that's not a grass court specialist, it's like, yeah, it's going to be more difficult for them, but you still kind of expect them to win these matches.
Yeah, I want to see Zverev come to the net more too, like finish points earlier, because he does have good hands, and I think like watching him play clay, he's more meticulous, plays a lot from the baseline, but I think he needs to make more adjustments, especially if you're playing against a lesser ranked player who has more, or sorry, who has less to lose, who will play more, um, you
Aggressively.
know, aggressively. I think Zverev will need to just try to end the points instead of hanging back on the baseline.
Yeah, and his serve is such a weapon when it's on. Like, as long as he has confidence in his serve and has confidence that he'll get a decent ball to put away, he should be doing that almost every point.
Yeah, yeah, you would think.
But this kind of brings up another category of guys that I wanted to talk about, which is the big servers, who are guys that are kind of grass specialists because having a massive serve is so beneficial on grass. So I'm talking about guys like Hurkacz, Berrettini, Bublik, or Shelton, or even Struff, who hasn't historically done as well on grass
Yeah,
for some reason. I don't understand why, but these guys, they have such a massive serve. It gives them like free points every single time they're on serve, and they only really have to play points when they're returning. So you see, I feel like a lot of tie breaks from these guys, but just having that big serve, how much of an advantage is it going to be in a tournament like Wimbledon? I mean, Hurkacz we know has made deep runs, Berrettini's made deep runs. Does that apply also to guys like Bublik and Shelton? I guess we'll see.
yeah, that's a great point. Does because I feel like you can kind of separate Hurkacz and Berrettini from Bublik and Shelton, just as far as skill level. But I don't think I think Hurkacz, I'm gonna say it right now, quarters. Berrettini, not so sure, even though he was the runner-up in 2021. And he looked fantastic in his first round matchup too. He was only broken one time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, maybe that is just that much of a differentiator, the
Yeah.
big
I mean, I
serve.
think I think Berrettini has a little bit of an issue making a deep run given the fact he plays center in the second round.
Oh my God.
So yeah, if you made a prediction like him making the quarters, I'd be like, wow, it's an
Yeah,
upset call
no,
there.
no. But what do you think about Hurkacz in the quarters?
I think that's a good call. I
Yeah,
think Hurkacz he has a past of playing pretty well at Wimbledon. I think his game obviously suits playing on grass just with how dominant his serve can be. So yeah, I'd say that's a pretty solid call.
what about winning the tournament?
Winning the
He's not.
tournament,
He's
I
not.
just
He's not there. He's not
don't
there.
think he has the overall skill to do
Right.
that.
Right.
It's like, yeah, he has a good serve, but so does Sinner.
Hmm.
It's like when you get into a tiebreak and all Sinner has to do is win, like break Hurkacz's serve twice or two
Yeah.
points worth. It's like, I don't know if Hurkacz can do the same thing or win as many.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you mentioned Ben Shelton. I think. Oh, I think the grass hurts younger players because they just don't have the experience on it. I think in 3, 4 years, we'll see Ben Shelton as more of a Hurkacz where, quarters automatic. But right now, I just don't see it for him.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, speaking of what Sam said last week again, it's like you see the guys that don't really know how to play on grass out there, and they're like a baby giraffe. It's like
Yeah.
legs going everywhere, sliding around on accident. It's like
Oh,
it's just not the. I don't want to say clumsy, but definitely not super precise
yeah,
with their
it's
their
awkward.
footwork and
Right.
shots.
Right.
But another category of guys I kind of want to talk about in terms of dark horses for the tournaments are the guys that have already been winners on grass this season. So guys like Tommy Paul, Jack Draper, Deminar. These guys have played well on grass. They've shown they have a high level on grass. Is it high enough to beat the top guys? Seems like it was for Draper, right? I mean, he showed that he could beat Alcaraz at Queen's Club, but can Tommy Paul translate winning at Queen's Club into beating a guy like Sinner at Wimbledon? It's really tough to make that call, but I do think obviously they've shown that they have a lot of potential to do well this tournament.
Yeah, I mean Tommy, he obviously great title, but I think he somehow managed to avoid, playing the top of the top. So I
Mm-hmm.
think all these three guys who have titles, I'm not I'm not counting them. I gotta say, like they might go deep, but I don't see any of them winning the
Yeah.
tournament.
I mean, the weird thing with someone like Deminar is like you feel like his style just doesn't make sense on grass. You're like, how did he win a grass tournament? And I feel like it kind of shows he's one of those guys that like his level on other surfaces propelled him to winning on grass, but doesn't necessarily mean that he's a great grass player specifically.
Well said. Very well said.
But yeah, and then going into the last group of guys I want to talk about coming into this tournament are just the guys that are complete question marks.
Mhm.
And I made this list before all the matches were done today, but I said Tsitsipas, Rublev, Rude, Dimitrov, and Runa. And obviously, we saw what happened with Rublev today.
Oh yeah, the classic outburst where he just smashed his racket all on his knee too. I feel like if you're gonna do it, I guess you can't do it on the grass,
Yeah,
right?
completely just
Yeah.
imploded. I mean, I guess
Oh,
to the extent that's kind of like when a baseball player breaks the bat over their knee. It's like, yeah, you
yeah,
could smash it against the ground, but it's a lot more satisfying when they do it over their
yeah.
leg.
What was his opponent ranked?
Like 122, I want to say. Yeah, pretty bad. But guys like Tsitsipas, I mean, Tsitsipas did what okay last year until he lost to Eubanks, I think. Um,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
look at
you're
someone
right.
like Rude who plays one grass tournament a year. It's like, what do you expect from him? Like, has he
Yeah,
worked on his grass game at all? Doesn't
yeah. He's
seem
been
like it.
golfing.
Yeah,
Duh.
exactly.
He
Uh,
hit the links.
Dimitrov, like, what is his level like? We don't really know. I mean, he's been playing very solid overall. Does that
Yeah,
mean that he'll be able to perform and do really well at Wimbledon? I feel like you look at Dimitrov and you say, this guy's probably going to make the fourth round and then lose.
yeah. I
It's
know.
like,
But then that begs the question earlier, like Tsitsipas, is he expected to go far because he is a top player?
I think Tsitsipas, it's like if Tsitsipas loses in the fourth round, I wouldn't be super disappointed in his performance. Like
Yeah,
that's my standard for a
yeah,
guy like Tsitsipas or Dimitrov because it's like I said, it's like backing up their ranking.
mhm,
They're not in the top 8 right now,
yeah,
but they are in the top 16.
yeah.
So it's like they're expected to make the final 16 of a Grand Slam, essentially.
Right.
If they
If you,
lost in the third round, it would be a disappointment, but it wouldn't be a crazy disappointment because they're not known as people that are great on grass.
yeah, and I'm thinking if with Tsitsipas, he can't really handle the high backhands very well. So you would think that he would do, relatively better on grass because the ball doesn't bounce up as high on his backhand side. Am I crazy
Yeah.
to think that, or
I guess. I mean, I think that's it's just that like the overall game and pace of
yeah, yeah.
the ball doesn't really fit how
He's
he likes to play.
Yeah, he's more of an orchestrator, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And then for someone like Runa,
Yeah.
where is he? I mean, where's he been all
I
year,
have
to be
no
honest?
clue.
Like, I feel like he's been nowhere really. Like, you look at him last year, he was in the ATP finals. And then you look at him this year and he's like, has he done anything that's super impressive or like stands out? Not really. I did see a funny thing today about him being like, oh, yeah, uh, talking about him and Sinner and Alcaraz being the next big three. And I'm like, Runa, you're like not even in the top 10. Like, I get it, you're a great player to be in the top 20, but like don't say that you're the same as like the top two guys in the world. Like that's a
Oh,
crazy comparison.
That's hilarious. I thought you were gonna say the fact that like someone asked him about having a private chef. He's like, yeah, not anymore because I'm not in the top 10.
Oh
Like
God.
that's expensive. He's like, yeah, maybe when I get better, but
Yeah, that's that's pretty wild.
yeah,
But
I know. I wanted to mention something. This is kind of a funny matchup that I saw, but we have a generational one. Wawrinka is playing Monfils. Monfils.
ooh,
I know.
that's
Some
that's a
old dogs just going at it.
yeah. I gotta favor Monfils there, right? Like
Yeah,
Vavrinka,
he
I
is.
feel like isn't a grass guy.
No, Monfils is like heavy favorite too.
Oh, is he? Is he? Did
I
you just
just
check
feel
the
like
odds
one,
on that one?
yeah, it's at least plus 250 on him.
Mm, yeah,
Sorry, minus. Sorry, minus.
yeah. But
Uh,
yeah, that'll be a cool matchup to watch, kind of like Vavrinka Murray was at Roland Garros until you actually watched the match and saw
yeah,
that Murray was just gone. But
yeah, this is a blast from the past.
exactly. So you ready to hop into segments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Already, what's new in tennis? What did you see this week?
I saw a pretty crazy headline that caught my attention. So Francis Tiafoe under fire for saying that he has been losing to clowns. I'm
Oh
just gonna
my
be
God.
honest. I know. And just a little background on Francis, because we've mentioned him on here before, but so his comment came after his match against Arnaldi, and I'll say it for you right here because I got it. Quote, it's brutal, highs and lows. Think about where I'm at. Literally this week last year, I was 10 in the world, and now I'm barely seated here. Losing to clowns. I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be honest. I took the game for granted and got a little too comfortable. You stop having fun with it and you find yourself in a weird position. Then you kind of forget that you were going to win. So I I don't know, man. Like part of me is just writing it off to okay, this is just American slang, people throw around the word clowns. But then again, some of his losses this year are Jack Draper, Ben Shelton, Stefano Tsitsipas, Tommy Paul. Like those aren't clowns by any means.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like calling other players clowns is just a terrible like lack of sportsmanship, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like I get it. He's like not feeling great because he hasn't been playing super well, but really just it just shows zero respect for any of your opponents, right?
right. I know. And then people like brought up on because social media is absolutely tearing him a new one right now. And I mean, people bring up good points. Like that's your colleague, that's your work colleague, right? Like that's disrespectful. But I've also like I alluded to this before. I think it's just slang. I don't think he's really trying to offend anyone here. I think it's just being blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I kind of get that it's slang, but I feel like you have to look at something like where Djokovic lost to Luca Nardi at Indian Wells. He may have made excuses about why he lost the match, but he didn't say, I lost to this guy that absolutely sucks. And I feel like that's kind of what you hear when you hear Tiafo go, I'm losing to these clowns.
I know.
Like,
Well, yeah, I think it's his frustration talking, right?
yeah, but you don't think Djokovic was frustrated after he lost to a guy outside the top 100?
I guess you're right. Just being like part of a comparable season. Like Tiafoe's obviously pissed. He's 13 and 14 this year. Djokovic, same boat. I mean, obviously a way better season than Francis, but still no titles. This guy's used to winning. So yeah, I mean, Djokovic has just been on the tour a lot longer. He's more experienced. Maybe he knows how to deal with the frustration better.
You know, I feel like it's just excuses though, to be honest. Like there's an
Yeah.
idea of maturity and professionalism that you expect from a professional tennis player that Tiafo just isn't showing here.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you can make excuses. Obviously, he's a lot younger. He's not like a 35-year-old saying these things, but he's also not 19.
Yeah.
Like he is a
Yeah.
grown man and he should be a professional in these situations when he's asked questions like this. And I just feel like it's not showing any respect for his teammates, or not his
Yeah.
teammates, but his opponents.
Right. I wonder if this will kind of alienate him on the tour because he's a likable guy.
Yeah,
Everyone,
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I
yeah,
guess it is a positive to him that he wasn't specific who he was talking
right.
about.
Yeah. What about you? What did you see this week?
Yeah, I mean, mine. Speaking of Murray playing Wawrinka at Roland Garros, Murray didn't get his last dance here at Wimbledon. He's playing doubles, but not playing singles. He pulled out last minute, and the people were making a big deal about this, like, oh, he's pulling out last minute. Why is he doing this? And Murray kind of said, dude, like, I can do this. I'm allowed to. I'm literally a legend of the game. I have won this tournament multiple times. Like, what do you want from me? And
Yeah.
really, there was no like downside to him being in that long because lucky loser Goffin just stepped in and played instead of him. It wasn't like Mahac just got a walkover to the second round. It like he's still playing a first round match and someone else just filled in. So I don't get why there would be a big deal about him pulling out super late, but it is a bummer that we don't get to see him play that last match.
It is a bummer, but what a legacy, man. Like, do you think he is Great Britain's like greatest sportsman ever? I feel like
Yeah,
he's
I
gotta
mean,
be.
who do you compare him to? I mean, Lewis Hamilton, maybe.
Yeah, Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney isn't on their level though. Like,
Yeah.
if I feel like if you're gonna go like greatest ever, do you go David Beckham over Wayne
Oh,
Rooney?
that's a good one.
Like, there's
But I
so
feel like
many.
he wasn't as liked as Andy Murray to the British people. Because
Uh,
people thought he was like a prick. Remember he got that red card in the
yeah,
World
yeah,
Cup?
but then he redeemed himself by hitting a free kick against
Yeah.
Greece and
Yeah.
making the comeback.
I
But
know. I just think Wimbledon, like the Brits have had such a tough time with, British people winning Wimbledon. I think he was the first person in like 100 years to win it, like 70 years to be a
yeah,
Brit
no,
to
no,
win
he's
it.
obviously like I think the
Multiple decades. Let's
greatest
just put it that way.
tennis guy. But I don't know about uh
You don't know about
greatest
sportsmen?
sportsman. It's tough.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of I feel like saying this would be disingenuous because I don't have all the people in front of me, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I could say that and then I see a list and I'm like, oh, that dude obviously is like way
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
But off the top of
Either
my
way,
head, yeah, I
hmm
think it's he's up there for sure.
he's up there. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's
Yeah.
life.
How about bat of the week though? What'd you go for this week?
Oh, dude, don't tempt me. I was very, very low key thinking about a mid match, throwing on Thanasi Kokonakis at plus 380 over FAA.
Oh,
Because right now,
because it got suspended.
yeah, it's suspended. So right now he's down 2-1 sets,
Mm.
and it's continuing tomorrow. And I don't know, man.
You don't think
I
FAA
don't
has it?
know. We'll see. I just feel like Thanasi will maybe make adjustments overnight. Who knows? But the more responsible bet would be Popperin over Echeverry at minus 155. That's what I'm actually going to throw on. I took Popperin a couple of weeks ago, and I just love his game on grass. I think it translates very well. He's got the big serve, big game, and then Echeverry is one of those clay rats. So I think I like the odds here.
Solid. I think it's a pretty solid explanation too. Yeah, Popperin, very solid game with that massive serve.
Yeah, dude, he's got one of the fastest serves in the world, like at least top 20
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
recorded. So,
hundred
what
percent.
about you? Who are you taking this week?
I'm going with Fognini plus 390 over Rude, and obviously it's because of the reasons we've already talked about. Rude historically not a big grass guy and has actually never made it past the second round at Wimbledon.
Oh,
I think that's really disappointing. This is a situation where I would expect him to win, but I just have no faith in his game. Like, he should win because of how good he is on other surfaces, but I feel like he has no confidence in his game on grass. So we'll see what happens here. And I think while Fognini hasn't had a great year, historically he's a pretty decent player, and I think he can get the upset and obviously pretty solid, juicy odds here.
yeah, I like your explanation, but I cannot ride with you on this. That would be treason to my fellow
Yeah,
Viking.
can't go against Rude there.
Can't. But I hear what you're saying. Oh,
Yeah,
rude
it's
man.
tough.
This
It's
would be
tough.
crazy.
It's tough with Searoot on grass.
I know.
But anyway, how about match of the week? What'd you go for now?
Oh, this match of the week was crazy. So I was taking the young Frenchman, Cazot. He beat Bergs in an absolute five-set thriller. So the score was 6-1, 6-4, 6-7, 6-7, 7-6. So three out of the five sets were went to tiebreakers, and then the final set was 10-8. And I just feel like this embodies the spirit of Grand Slams. Like this is what Grand Slams are all about. And I mentioned earlier that I want to see certain players exposed, and I was kind of thinking like, okay, French players are generally better on clay, so maybe we won't see as much of a French dominance here. But gotta eat my words because he absolutely showed out today. I think this shows absolute grit too. Like this guy was up 2 sets to love and then lost the next 2 sets in tiebreakers, but still found out a way to close out the match in a fifth set tiebreaker.
100%. Yeah, it is impressive. I mean, it's funny how closely this kind of parallels another match with Impeshi Pericard beating Korda. Like that match was like 7-6, 6-7, 7-6, 6-7, and then 6-3 in the last set. And it's like so close, so back and forth. But the Frenchman, who you don't necessarily expect the grass dominance or the grass high level, gets it done in a close 5-setter. But yeah, these matches are really tough when you have like momentum swings like this, where you're up 2 sets. Like you said, being in a tiebreak, you're like, I am so close to winning the match. You get to another tiebreak, I'm so close to winning the match, and you lose both of those and are still able to come back and win that 5th set. Really a great job.
Yeah. What about you, man? What was your match of the week?
My match of the week is the match that they interviewed Tiafoe after, where he came back from down 2 sets to beat Arnaldi. I think it's just positive to see him get a win, to be honest. Like, I would, if he lost the first round, I would have been like, okay, I guess that makes sense based on how he's been playing. But I'm glad to see him get a win. I'm a little disappointed in his comments after, as we mentioned earlier when you brought that up. But going back to that match, he was actually up a break in both of the first 2 sets, but then lost the breaks and the sets.
Whoa.
And then was able to kind of recover. And in the 3rd set, he had this marathon game 1-2 where he eventually got a break. And from there, the momentum kind of swung and he won 3 sets in a row, came back, won the match. And he ended up breaking Arnaldi 4 more times to win the match, while he didn't get broken a single time.
Wow. Yeah, that's just experience right there, huh? Being an older player and playing a 5-set match.
Yeah, an older player being able to
relatively
win
older.
the match, but also be immature enough to say those comments. I don't want to go. I keep going in on him for that.
Yeah,
that's definitely a big thing we've seen in this tournament, is the inexperience of the players like playing a role. Like there have been a lot of guys like Mickelson or what was his name? Jubb. He also another young guy, where it's like you can win the first 2 sets. Both of these guys did, and then you kind of fall apart in those later sets just because you're not used to maybe both the grass court and the 5-set format.
Yeah, I know. I had high hopes for Jubb, especially after beating Shelton last week, and he was up 2 sets to love, like you said, and just couldn't close it out. But yeah, it's part of the game, I guess. You live and you learn.
100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.